Henry, one of the critics, of course, one of the many aspects of criticism when it comes to this rise of Bitcoin has been from the regulatory point of view of how, as a fiduciary professional investor, how you could possibly be okay with having this as part of your customer's portfolio where there's such a lack of regulation. Is there a sense that this is improving, or is it that regulators are still kind of chasing their tails when it comes to cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, Heidi, this is a great question. Obviously, I think the news with the Bitcoin futures this week is actually obviously a pretty big game changer for the industry, because previously for a lot of institutional investors, one of the excuses that was used was that there was no way for them to enter into the space and get exposure to the crypto space, whereas that excuse now is not going to hold as much anymore. And I think it's going to be interesting to see over the coming months how a lot of institutional investors will deal with this. It's not necessarily, doesn't mean that it's appropriate for all of them, but they will at least need to make a decision at the investment committee level.
Yeah, because it's interesting. We keep talking about this sentiment seems largely to be fear of missing out, right? And is that the case with institutional investors getting involved not because they feel kind of ready to approach crypto, but that they are fearing the possibility of missing out on the rally?
Yeah, I think FOMO is a topic that comes out a lot. I think not only with institutional investors, where we are seeing a lot of interest from hedge funds, but also family offices. But I would say really when it comes to the retail space. I mean, for example, only during Thanksgiving week, there was more than 300,000 crypto accounts that were opened with Coinbase in the US. And what's really interesting with this is, despite all the innovations that Bitcoin and crypto is bringing on, actually trading the instrument is actually quite difficult. Forget only just opening an account at exchange and trading it, but also safeguarding the private keys. Unlike a bank, where if I lose my PIN, I can go to a bank and get access to my account. If you lose your private keys, you lost your crypto forever.
So what that's kind of terrifying to think about. I mean, what's the answer to that?
Oh, I mean, I think one of the developments I expect over the next year to come is a lot of actually new solutions to come in the market to help not only on the retail side, where a lot of solutions to make it more user-friendly for people to get into the space, but also on the institutional side as well. For example, when it comes to custody or other more institutional type products that will be made available, not only mainly for, let's say, crypto funds who are entering the space.
I want to keep talking about Bitcoin in terms of this kind of regulatory environment that's struggling to keep up. You're saying that the net is kind of closing in. I'm really curious as to whether the Taxman is going to be, the kind of boring crash to this Bitcoin party.
No, absolutely, Heidi. I think what's been really interesting, it's not only Bitcoin investors who've been quite happy over the last 12 months, but also I think a lot of tax authorities have been looking at the space more closely as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see over the next year a bit of more focus from tax authorities around the world on Bitcoin. A great example of this was in the US, where the IRS a couple of weeks ago got a federal court order against one of the big crypto exchanges after they realized that only less than 1,000 people had actually declared their Bitcoin holdings in their annual tax return, when there's clearly more Bitcoin accounts than that available in the US.
So just as a broader kind of question is why has Bitcoin kind of really captured the imaginations of the broader public, even though a lot of people, I think, still don't quite understand the blockchain technology that's behind it, because there are lots of other cryptocurrencies out there. We've only just kind of started talking more about Ethereum, and that's because of the whole CryptoKitties things that have kind of sent it into the headlines. So what is it about Bitcoin that has attracted the most attention?
Yeah, Heidi, it's a good question. I think there's a lot of factors that can explain it, not only from the fear of missing out that you were discussing earlier to the entry of institutional investors in the space. But I think what's really important and what I like to often focus on, I really believe that the price of Bitcoin or the media attention around the Bitcoin is actually more of a noise and a distraction. What often I like to focus on is really some of the institutional investors and providers who are getting into this space, or even some of the providers accepting Bitcoin. I mean, a great example of this is us at PwC, where 2 weeks ago we actually accepted our first payment in Bitcoin, which I think is a great example of more mainstream businesses, if you want, embracing cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, really interesting. And in your notes and your forecast for 2018, you talk about Fintech, Regtech, Subtech, which is my favorite. But what's the game changer for next year?
There's a lot of actually innovations taking place in the space. I mean, you mentioned Regtech, or Regtech is a great example, which is really the use of new technology to solve compliance and regulatory burdens, not only more effectively, but also more efficiently. And this is really where banks, I mean, have often thousands of headcount and spend billions of dollars a year to deal with compliance and regulatory requirements. And actually, really, Regtech is able to finally solve a lot of those issues.